Jimbo Paris, and you are listening to The Jimbo Paris Show. Hello, everyone. This is Jimbo Paris. Welcome again to The Jimbo Paris Show. Today we have Matthew, and Matthew is a keynote speaker and medical device sales expert. So this is super cool stuff. Again, I'm a Johns Hopkins student, so anything medical really just fascinates me. So let's just see what he has to say. I want to learn more about a lot of these so-called devices that he works with. So let's see. How's it going, man?
Hey, Jimbo. How are you?
I'm doing great. You play the guitar?
Not very well.
Okay.
It's more of an art piece. But yeah, that's a Fender Malibu. It's a smaller guitar, and I got bigger hands. So I attempted to learn. Need to get a different one, but I think it looks cool on the wall, so that's where it is.
So tell me a bit about yourself.
Sure. One, thank you for having me on your show. It's great to meet you. A little bit about me. I grew up, was born in Chicago, but grew up in the Lake Tahoe area, and then moved back here. My parents split up when I was in junior high. But as you had mentioned, I've been in the sales world for 28 years as a medical device rep. I've sold surgical equipment, open heart surgery. I've sold stuff for laparoscopy, orthopedics. And I've spent probably the last 15 years in what they call the interventional space, interventional radiology, cardiology, and electrophysiology. But the path of getting there was really pretty interesting one, because I grew up under extreme adversity. So I was born misdiagnosed with MS, and at about 6 months old, I had casts on both of my legs, braces at different times. It wasn't until I was about 5 that physicians figured out I had a growth in my spine that was causing nerve damage to my left leg, and it wasn't developing the same way as my right leg. And so, I had it removed, but I had to undergo about 6 different surgeries between the ages of 5 and 10, countless tests, going into hospitals and getting poked and prodded. And really, it can be very scary for a kid when you're not really understanding what's happening. The fascinating part about it was, as I always say, that was probably one of my biggest fears as a child, was a hospital, because I associate it with pain. And to then turn around and have a career in the medical industry where I go right back into those hospitals, and now I'm actually standing by patients and physicians, and I'm showing them how to use the equipment, is a bit ironic, but it also kind of shows you the power of facing your fears, and that when you do, growth and opportunities will come out of that. And so I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing today if I hadn't, built up that resilience as a kid, and learned how to be persistent, and just realize, hey, I'm going to get through this. And so I'm actually very grateful for having to go through that.
What drives you?
Well, I always have a saying. You have to have, a lot of people say, well, how do I get motivated? How do I get out of bed in the morning? The key is really having purpose in life. So if you apply purpose to just about anything, purpose is what fuels motivation, or in my opinion, what fuels drive. To say, hey, this is something that I'm going to work on. This is a goal. I work out a ton at the gym. I have a purpose when I go to the gym. I'm trying to build my body to a certain way. I'm trying to get to a certain fitness level. I always have some sort of purpose of going to the gym. So when I actually get there, I'm working on something. I'm not just going through the motions, which a lot of people who go to the clubs think I'm going to just get on a treadmill or a Stairmaster, or I'm going to just go through the motions. And then they never actually end up really getting anywhere in their fitness because they didn't have really an overall purpose of why they're going. The purpose could be, hey, I want to drop 50 pounds. I want to get in the best shape of my life. So if you don't have purpose, it's pretty hard to have any kind of drive towards anything. So my purpose, really, I've had multiple ones. My purpose now is really to help other people. I really believe that what I went through as a kid, uh, that was a gift that was given to me. I've had a deformed left leg my entire life. I've had to live with, and you can identify as a victim because of that. That, well, this happened to me, so I'm not going to be able to do these things or that. Or you can say, hey, no. This was given to me. I accept it. You can learn to adapt and overcome. And when you embrace what I like to call adversity, challenge, or struggle, that's where you learn things about yourself. That's where you grow. That's where you get stronger. And I think that's the biggest differentiator between people who really go somewhere in life, get the things they want to get out of it, and others who just really find themselves in a state of lack, or also just a state of feeling like they're stuck. So my biggest mission, or my mission in life now, is to take all the things that I've gone through at this point, because I feel incredibly blessed. I wake up with gratitude, appreciation every day, and the more that I give out, seems like always come back to me. So this is probably the most important thing that I've actually ever done at this stage in my life. So I'm 50 now, and I always say that, I'm more excited about the next 25 years of life versus when I was 25 and I was, excited about what was ahead. So because it's just the level of importance, and I think it's pretty obvious. There's such a huge need for people who are just feeling like, well, how do I do that? How do I look at what my current circumstances are right now and make a change that's going to, get me to a better place? And so I put a ton of my energy. I still am a salesman. I still am in that medical device space. But over the last 3 years, I've really just put a huge focus on, I write about it, I speak about it, and any chance I get to share my story, even if it's just one-on-one, if you can spark something inside of someone to say, okay, look at what this guy went through. I think I can do it too.
What is a sales executive?
It's a fancy word for saying I'm a salesperson, basically. So, yeah, I mean, in the medical, it's interesting. You say you go to John Hopkins, or you went to John Hopkins. So in my world, as a salesperson, I'm no different than someone who sells cars, life insurance, real estate. I'm a salesperson. I just happen to sell things that basically need, they're in the medical world. They're used in medical procedures, OR procedures. So I have to understand how to speak the language. But at the end of the day, the same principles that apply to if you were to go buy a car at a car dealership, I do the same exact thing. I'm just doing it with something that's potentially can save somebody's life or improve their life.
How do you communicate as a medical device salesperson?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do, and this is no different than any sales job, is, understand who your customer is, understand who your audience is, understand how to speak, the language that they speak. So medical, whether it's, anatomy, procedures, but ultimately what has served me very well over doing this over a very long period of time is taking the time to understand what a person's pain point is, or what issues are you facing right now. And if you can become a master at providing solutions for things, basically problems, you'll do very well in my line of work, because that's ultimately what people are looking for. They're looking for solutions. Sometimes they don't even realize that they need a solution to something. So identifying what's going on, understanding what their business is, and and then being able to add value by providing, whether it's product or service, that call it specialized knowledge. When you have specialized knowledge, people are going to be willing to pay for it.
Do you think combining being a motivational speaker and a sales executive is an advantage in your field?
Well, I think having the ability to identify with people and relate to people, and I write about this a lot. I believe that we as people, regardless of the color of our skin, our gender, sexuality, whatever it is, circumstances, that we all actually share a very common bond. And the bond is that every single one of us goes through some sort of struggle in life at times, that we might face some sort of adversity. And then there's challenges. There's challenges that basically we challenge ourselves, and the other ones that we just basically, the challenge chooses you. So you wake up one day and something changes, and wow, suddenly I've got to deal with something. We all go through very similar things. The more you talk to people, and I've been very, you probably see it, by doing the show. It's amazing how many times, it's a small world. People just seem to go through very similar things, whether it's in relationships, career, different types of struggles. And so I think being able to relate to people, regardless of where you're at, and identify, and then communicate in a way where, I always say that the best form of communication is never try and force somebody to think the way you think, or put something on them and say, well, this is the way it has to be. If you just believe in what you're saying, like truly and authentically, then people are going to believe you. So to me, it's just about being authentic, true to yourself. And if you have just this conviction inside about what you're talking about, people are going to gravitate towards that. I always say there's a difference between power and force. I don't think you should force anything. Force is never going to be a way where you get a good outcome. True power lies in just allowing things to come to you. So if that makes sense.
How are you authentic to yourself?
I think you got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and accept yourself 100% for your flaws, things you're not so great at, but ultimately just accept all of it and just be true to yourself. Don't try to be something you're not. Just be you. I'd say that's the easiest answer I could come up with, and I think so many people are trying to be something they're not nowadays, especially with social media. I mean, it's out there all the time. I'm going to take this picture of myself and make myself look a certain way, but what's really going on behind the picture? How are you really feeling? And I think just being really honest and open is the best way of being authentic.
What is the toughest part of being a motivational speaker?
Well, it's funny you keep calling me a motivational speaker. I guess I in a lot of ways I am. I've spent way more time writing than speaking, but for me, I'm really an up and coming speaker. So as someone really wanting to get out there, I would say most of my speaking has been done to smaller audiences, but I do see myself, I have pictured it and envisioned it in my mind speaking to very large crowds. I think it's just, the toughest part is it's when you have someone who's so stuck in their ways that almost it's like the person who doesn't want to help themselves. the easiest people to talk to and the easiest people to motivate are those who understand that the only way I can really help myself is the only way I can improve my situation is if I take complete ownership of it and I realize I've got to do it myself. Because those are people that are you can teach. Those are people who I always say are worth putting your hand out to help get up. The person who doesn't want to change, the person who reads a book and doesn't incorporate anything in it, that's probably the hardest part is just trying to break through to I think that group that has just decided that you know it's like that's I think it's one of the reasons why you see countless self-help books come out every single year, and there's people who are constantly writing about really the same thing that's been talked about for a couple thousand years. I'm not the first person to by any stretch of the means to talk about the power of thought and that the reality of your life is how you think every single day. It's been there's been best-selling books on it, and yet so many people still haven't really figured it out or figured out how to do it. And so I think being a motivation, whether it's talking about motivation or how to improve your situation, it's communicating with the person who is so stuck in their internal programming, try to get them to realize that to look at things from another perspective and then actually do it.
So, would you consider yourself a motivational writer? Why don't you consider yourself a speaker necessarily?
I'm a speaker too. I've just spent most of my attention and over the last year has been on publishing my books. And so, I've got a 3-book series out called Unlocking Your Greatest Assets Through Challenge, Adversity, and Struggle. 2 of them are out. The third one's coming out in August. And just so much of my time has been devoted towards writing these books and getting them out. And so I am definitely a speaker, but most of my time in the last year has just been on creating, writing, and getting the content out.
What was it like publishing your first book ever?
So technically, I started writing back in 2020 during the pandemic. And it was really just a way of, I think it was such an uncertain time of confusion and, the unknown and what's going on. And I just started writing these pieces as a way of just trying to throw something out there to uplift people, provide some inspiration, some comfort. We're all going through a very challenging environment. And through the process of doing that, I just came up with about 50 different pieces. And my first experience of publishing a book was actually through a very small publisher. And they had reached out to me, was interested in my writing. And, my first book really wasn't what I wanted it to be. The writing was, but the way the book came out, it wasn't how I really imagined it. But what I appreciate about the process was just really the process itself, because it was so foreign to me. I'd never even done it before. It looks like a mountain. How am I going to do that? And I got to actually experience it. It was a ton of learning. I met some really amazing people along the way. I met Jack Canfield. I met other writers, people in the industry, and it gave me confidence that, and I'm on a path here. I'm just getting started. This isn't just the, write one book and you're done. And I think you asked what's the most challenging part. Writing it is not challenging. I actually love the creative process. The most challenging part of putting a book out nowadays is there's over 60 million books on Amazon. There's more content created every single year than there was in the past 50 years combined. So you get, every year you have a million new books hitting the market. How do you get recognized in this ocean of material? And so that's probably the most challenging. I think that's probably also one of the most frustrating parts for many, many authors, is that there's actually a lot of really good books that never go anywhere, just because, you know, you can't just publish a book and then think, okay, it's out there, everyone's going to buy it. It doesn't work that way. You know, you have to be able to work on it every single day, work on promoting, getting eyeballs on your work. And I think if you really believe in what you're doing, then is it challenging? Yes, but that's just part of what you got to do. So I think that's probably what most independent authors struggle with, though.
Are you self-published?
My first book was published by a small publisher. My 3-book series, I did all myself. And actually, I found it to be a much more, I liked that idea. I like the process of doing. I think there's more tools available now than there ever has been for people to actually, if you want to actually put a book out, it's probably easier than it's ever been in so many ways. I just figured it out. I watched a podcast on how to do it, and I was like, okay, I can do that. And it's actually, you don't realize, does it take a little bit of work? Of course, but anything does. So through the process of just kind of saying, yep, I'm going to do it this way, I like the idea of having control over my own work and deciding what I'm going to do with it and when. And that to me is always, that's important to me. So I want to make sure that whatever I put out, it meets a certain standard and quality. Like my first book, yeah, it was a good experience, but when I got it, I was like, the paper wasn't very nice. I didn't like the way the print had come out, and I was like, well, my name's on this, And so, if you're going to buy one of my books today, many people buy Kindle version. I do have an audio book out as well, but if you buy a print copy of my book, the paper's top rate, printing's great, everything about it. To me, it's like, I want you to feel like, hey, I bought this not only for the content inside, but you should feel good about what you get.
Now, we all have comfort zones.
Sure.
How do you motivate yourself to go outside of them?
That's a great question. So I think it really is. I've had to do it my whole life. And I'm, like I said, I'm so grateful for what I went through as a kid, because I was in constant discomfort. I was thrown into situations all the time that were stressful and just, not what every kid has to go through. And I think through that, I just realized that, wow, though, when I actually get through these things, I'll become stronger. And so as an adult, or whoever you are, like I always say, like the familiarity, Les Brown talks about this all the time, is that familiarity is the land of the dead. If you just want to do the same thing every single day, and there's a difference between, having discipline and routine for things that actually get you to where you want to go, versus just falling into the same old thing every single day and then thinking, well, why am I not going anywhere? Why isn't anything improving? It's because you're not actually willing to go, we'll call it this. You have to be able to reach for something that's out of grasp. So reach as high as you can, add 6 inches, and that's your target. So, for me on a daily basis, like, I always like to relate things to the gym, because I think one of the ways I've gotten to where I'm at from a physical standpoint is I know how to push myself. I know that if I want to get stronger, I've got to do more than the next day. I've got to throw that extra 10 pounds on the bench press or the squat rack. You've got to push yourself to break through limits. If you do the same exact routine at the gym every single day, and you use the same exact weights and the same amount of reps, your body is just going to get conformed to that. It's going to get used to it. and you're not going to grow at all. You might actually even go backwards. So if you want to grow, you got to be able to push yourself. You got to be able to do things that don't feel comfortable, because that's where the land of things not being comfortable is where all the good stuff lies. And so, there's that saying that, life is hard, right? It's hard to be poor. It's hard to, feel depressed every single day. It's hard to feel like you go to a job that you don't like every single day. That's hard. You know what else is hard? Like wanting to improve, wanting to be better, wanting to, do things that other people aren't willing to do, so you can have the things, that other people don't have. That's hard. So, this is not my own saying, but choose your heart. Which heart do you want? I'd rather have the heart that actually leads to the things that, happiness, love, abundance, help, focus on the things that get you, those things. And then, what happens? Life becomes pretty easy when you're willing to do the hard things.
What is your strategy to overcoming obstacles?
So that's another really good question. I think the first thing is you have to change your perspective on what an obstacle, or let's call it a problem, is. So if you view it strictly as obstacle, barrier, problem, and all you focus on is that, you're never going to actually see beyond it. And the way to see beyond it is to realize that an obstacle, a problem, it's not really what it is. It's an opportunity. So the way I focus on overcoming them is, one, I always believe, I know it in my heart, that there's something good that's going to come out of this. There's a reason why you have to face it. Obstacles are part of the process of getting to success. It's just something you're going to run into no matter what. It's not always like a clear path, right? Nothing on the road, it's cleanly paved. When we drive through the road of life, we're going to run into potholes, twists and turns, sometimes an intersection. Which way do I go? And that's just a process. If you embrace it and you realize that, hey, there's an opportunity here. I'll give you an example, because this is an obstacle that I am going through right now. I had a territory change in my business where half of it, I had to give up half of my territory. And then I had another 6 accounts added in that were all problem accounts. They had been basically, I took them over. They had issues, aren't really buying from us anymore. So I could focus on it in a way of, geez, if I just lost half my business, I just picked up 6 accounts that suck. Like, what am I supposed to do with these? If I view it that way, that's called a victim mentality. Poor me, my circumstances suck, I'm screwed. That's going to do you no good at all. The other way to look at it is, I just picked up 6 accounts, 6 new growth opportunities. Somebody else didn't get it right. I have an opportunity to go in and fix them. When I fix them, I'm going to blow my business up. I can view it from that perspective and say, hey, I also got rid of half of these accounts. I have a more condensed area to work with now. I don't have to travel as much. I can focus on a smaller group. I can get more out of the places that I wasn't able to go to as much. So it's really just a change of perception. How are you going to view it? Are you going to look for the positive strand inside? Or are you going to, just say, well, I guess I ran into this barrier. I guess that means I got to stop. So that's the way I do it. I think it's the only way to do it.
How do you inspire yourself?
Well, You have to have, we'll go back to this purpose. You have to have purpose in life. I mean, I think that's really, I always write about this, and I'm not, like I said, there's many people who talk about it, but I really do believe that every single one of us has a gift inside. There's something that you're born with. You're a unique person. There's something special about you that only you have, and I believe that about myself, that there was a gift inside I was born with. And if you can discover what that is early in life, oh boy, you know, that's such a huge advantage, because many people go through their entire lives. They end up in a grave. They always say, Les Brown talks about this all the time. The graveyard is like one of the richest places on the planet, because it's full of unfulfilled dreams and goals and ideas that never came to fruition. So, I always think that, the thing is that you just have to, be willing to kind of do that inner work, really look at yourself, and so many of us, people we're bombarded with negativity every day. It's in the media, it's all around us. There's, those out there that want to divide people. And, so the biggest thing you can do is make a shift and block out negativity, get rid of it. It serves no purpose other than to ruin things. So putting yourself in a negative environment, or, like, this is a great example, actually. The advertising industry figured this out a long time ago, that if I can repeat something over and over again, and I can get you to listen to it enough times, it'll get planted in your brain. And then you will just feel compelled out of nowhere to go do whatever it is I want you to do. That's a control mechanism. So when you can take control over your own mind and realize, okay, two things. There's external things out there I need to guard it from. I don't want any kind of negative things to get planted in there. And then it's my own thinking behavior, the way I think in terms of the thoughts that are going through my head on a daily basis. When you can realize that that is really impacting you either in a positive or negative way. And again, the mind doesn't care, right? The mind does not care what gets planted. It's just simply going to give you what you ask for. So if you ask for good stuff on a regular basis, you're going to get the good stuff in return. But if you are constantly focusing on why things aren't working and talking yourself down, and you're worrying, and you're just stressed all the time, then you let things like the negative emotions of anger and hatred, if you let these things, if this is what you're focusing on every day, you're not going to be living a very good life at all. Mm-hmm. And nothing good's going to come from you. So I think being able to have that awareness, and then understanding that there's actual steps you can take to program your own thoughts, and call it controlled thought. You can really chat. That's how you change your life. It's really that simple. Now, it takes work. It's not always easy. And I think one of the biggest reasons why is because we're programmed from a very young age to think quite differently. And we have so many of these things coming at us that it's very hard to change. In fact, change is one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing, that people have to do. And so having that introspective, self-awareness of, oh my gosh, this is what I'm doing. It's almost like an aha moment for someone who finally figures it out. All I'm focusing on is what I don't have. I'm focusing on my current situation. I'm focusing on, I'm never going to get to here because what I'm doing now isn't going to lead there. And you're right, it won't. You have to do it the other way around. Mm-hmm. You have to basically say, okay, I want to live in this place in 5 years, and I'm going to have this kind of house, and I want my income to be at this level. And it doesn't matter the how. People get stuck on the how all the time. Well, how am I supposed to do that? I don't have the right kind of job right now, or I don't have the money in the bank to make that happen. And that's just focusing on what your current reality is, not what you're future reality can be. And if you just do, like I said, it goes back to just doing the same thing. Yeah, you're right. You want to go to the same job, you want to earn the same amount of money, you want to, you know, you don't want to change any of those things, then that's not going to happen. But when you open your mind up to possibilities, what's possible, it's not about understanding. I'm going to give you a great story here. It's one of my favorites. So I went through another very adverse stage of my life back in 08, 09. I got divorced. I have 2 children. They were 5 and 8 at the time. A year after I got divorced, my business went completely belly up. I lost over $1 million over the course of a year, all the way down to zero. I went from being plus $1 million to actually losing 3 properties and being $1 million in debt. And I was 37 years old. So everything that I had worked for from 23 to 37 wiped out, gone. That is not a fun experience to go through. and especially when I'd spent my whole life working up to a point where, wow, like I'm in a really good place. And then suddenly, boom, I am just, I was bleeding out for a year. It wasn't until I got up one day and I just looked at my son and I said, what are you doing? The things you're doing are making this all happen. You need to change. If you don't change, you're going to just keep going down this really horrible path. I actually wrote a piece about it called The Rising, and it's like a wildfire in life. We all go through sometimes a wildfire in life. And what does a wildfire do? It destroys everything, right? But it also clears out the things that don't need to be there. And it clears them out so that you can have new growth and you can plant new things. And in order to do that, it all has to go away. And I had just this realization that, you know what, I needed to go through this in order to get rid of the bad habits, in order to change the way I think. And the one thing that I was left with that I realized, I might have lost all these material things, but what I have is my mind. I have the experience. I have the know-how. I've just gone through all the wrong ways of how to do something. I know not to do those again. Now I can reapply. And so over the course between 37 and I'll be 51 this August, I rebuilt it all. I'm better off today than I was before that happened. But it all started with me having to look at myself and say, the things that you're doing, this is why you're this is why you're here. You reach this, it's nobody else's fault. You are 100% accountable for all of this. Own it. When you own it, you have power over it. That's how you take control. And that also allows you to get rid of the victim mentality and say, you know what, enough of that. It's time to move forward, do things the right way, make the necessary changes in life. And it's amazing, that was over 14 years ago. And I think for many people, when you're in that bad place, you're just thinking, oh my God, how could I ever get back? Or, to where I was at. What I'll tell you is this, it's not about getting back to where you're at. You're going to soar way past that if you can make those changes. It's about thinking about, okay, there's so many examples, right? You've got, Henry Ford, been in the car. You know how many times he failed? Countless times trying to build a car for the first time. I think he had a 5th grade education, but he just had it in his mind that I'm going to just figure out every time I fail, I'm going to learn what not to do. I'm going to reapply it, make adjustments, and I'm going to keep doing that until I succeed. Same thing with Thomas Edison. There's countless stories of those who, failure is just part of success. You have to be willing to fail in order to learn something. The problem with failure is when you make it permanent. And many people fail, and then they say, well, that's it, I give up. And then they never try again. As long as you don't stop trying and you don't repeat the same way again. I always say, this is one of my favorite sayings. I think I came up with this, but I said, if you do the same thing over and over again that gets you bad results, you're just going to get really good at doing something the wrong way. and that's ultimately what happens. You have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to take that input, make adjustments, and just realize it's part of the process. And actually, when you really start to enjoy the process, failure can be fun. It really can be, because then you're like, okay, you know what? Cross that off the list. I'm one step closer now to getting this right.
Very well said. A lot of good points there. So, as we wrap this up, thank you again, Matthew, for being on this show. This really has been a privilege. But what's one piece of practical advice you could give to the audience here?
So, I would say this. Regardless of where you're at, regardless of what your circumstances are, regardless of how bad something looks, there is always a positive strand in something that's maybe initially seen as bad. And there's two things I think that you need to incorporate into your life. And if you do, you can make amazing changes. The first one is accountability. It's just about taking ownership for every aspect, regardless of whether it's your fault or not. It's not about the other person. It's not about, well, they did this to me or that, or this happened. The whole point of accountability is really, it's about you keeping your power versus giving your power away. When you're not accountable, you give all your power away to other people to control you. When you keep it and you take accountability for everything, that's where the reason why it's important is because then you can move forward very quickly. You say, okay, this didn't work. It's on me. Got it. I apologize. Or, let's make an adjustment. You put it behind you and you move forward. When you stay in the past, you don't get anywhere. So accountability allows you to move forward quickly. Here's the other point. This to me is probably one of the biggest shifts you can make in your mind and your thinking. Things will happen to you things can happen in one of two ways. You can either view everything in your life and everything that happens, is it happening to you? So again, I'm a victim. This happened to me. It's not my fault. You can view things like that. Or you make the shift and you say, everything that happens in my life is happening for me. And that is a completely different perspective, because now what you're saying is, regardless of whether it's bad or it's good, whatever it is, you're saying it's happening for me to get me to where I want to go. Even if it's like some huge obstacle. The reason why that's important is that it shifts you from thinking about things as problems, or you're just focusing on the problem. And now you can get into a solution-based way of thinking. I actually get excited when problems get thrown at me, because when I have problems coming at me, I know that there's an opportunity on the other side of it. And so if I can't see it right away, that's okay. I know it's there. The only way you're ever going to get good at this is you just have to try. Just try it once. Instead of looking at it as happening to you, the next time something doesn't really go your way, a job loss, a relationship ended, I want you to start looking at it. This happened for me, and I wonder what the reason is, but I know it's something good.
Excellent. And how can we reach you?
So I'm an open book. I love hearing from readers. I love hearing people's stories. You can hit me up on Facebook, Matthew Sagowski. You know, feel free to send me a message. My email is on there. And then if you're interested in my writing, all of my books are on Amazon. So the Mindset Game is an instructional guide. Reveal Yourself is, and there's my author page. So they're all going to be under books. Reveal Yourself is really, I love this book. It's so different than anything else that's out there. But all of my books are on Amazon. The 3-book series, Assets of Inspiration, is coming out August 8th. That was my first book that I actually got back and I redid it. But my books are all about inspiration, motivation. It's about helping you basically understand where you're at now and how to get to where you want to go.
All right, Mr. Skagowski, thank you again for being on the show. Motivational speaker, medical sales device executive, you've done it all. I would also like to thank all of you for watching this show. You could check us out on our Roku TV channel, on our YouTube channel. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jimbo.
I'm currently working on a passion project that I'm really excited about, but I need your help to bring it to life. We will be launching soon our very own Jimbo Paris Academy, and this is going to be about aspiring creators and creating concepts. Thank you for your support. I'm sharing free bonus content to supporters, so let's make some amazing content together. Our affiliate partner, LifeWork Systems, focused on helping create a better collegial environment, looking at the mental health of business workers, business employees, and overall bringing the business up. Thank you for listening to the Jimbo Paris Show.